The rain outside had been falling for hours, soft at first, then heavier, the kind that carries both comfort and sorrow. I remember sitting on that couch, the flickering glow of the television painting my skin in shifting colors, and the sound of my husband's faint snoring echoing from the next room. The house smelled of wet earth, melting cheese, and guilt. My heart raced like a trapped bird because I knew what I had done, or what I was about to do, could never be undone. It began as nothing. Just two strangers with pizza boxes standing at my doorstep, raindrops running down their faces, laughter mixing with the thunder outside. But before the night ended, I would lose something far greater than self-control. I would lose the version of myself that once believed she was incapable of betrayal. Hey everyone, before I continue, I just want to take a moment to say thank you to all my amazing subscribers for your love and support. You are the reason I keep sharing these stories that reveal the dark corners of human emotion. And to my new and returning viewers, if you have not yet subscribed, I honestly cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button. It serves as the fuel and energy that keeps this channel alive. Please engage below. Share your thoughts, your feelings, and your lessons after this story. You never know who your words might heal. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. Mark and I had been married for 8 years. On the surface, we looked like the typical suburban couple from Colorado. A neat lawn, a golden retriever named Bailey, and a life that seemed complete. But behind the closed door of our marriage, silence had grown like mold on a forgotten wall. Mark had lost his job 6 months earlier. What began as frustration turned into detachment. He stopped talking, stopped laughing, and eventually stopped noticing me. I would dress up for him, cook his favorite meals, try to sit beside him and talk about anything. But his eyes were always elsewhere, buried in the glow of his phone or staring blankly at the television. I began to feel invisible, unwanted, unloved. Every night felt colder, even when he was lying right next to me. There is something profoundly painful about being lonely in the presence of the person you love. So that Friday night, I stayed up late again, restless and hungry. I ordered pizza, simple, harmless, or so I thought. I remember laughing to myself when I accidentally placed 2 separate orders from 2 different pizza places. A silly mistake, I thought. But that mistake would change everything. The first knock came around 10 p.m. It was Ethan, tall, polite, with soft brown eyes that carried the kind of warmth I had not seen in a long time. He smiled shyly as he handed me the pizza box, rain dripping from his eyelashes. The second knock came not 5 minutes later. Jake, confident, wild energy, playful grin. Double delivery, he had joked when I opened the door again, holding another pizza box in his hand. We all laughed. It was light, easy, harmless. At least, that is what I told myself. The rain was coming down harder by then, thundering against the roof. I told them they could wait inside until it slowed down. It was just kindness. Or that was how I justified it. They hesitated, but I insisted. 2 strangers in my living room, shaking off rainwater, laughing, and talking like we had known each other forever. Ethan complimented my decor. Jake teased me for watching old romantic comedies. I laughed more than I had in months. Minutes turned into an hour. The thunder outside roared like an echo of something deep inside me. A storm that had been waiting to break. I remember glancing toward the hallway where Mark slept. The door was slightly open, his breathing steady, unaware. That sight should have anchored me, reminded me of my vows of love, of loyalty. But instead, it only reminded me of how absent he had become. And in that moment, I did not feel married. I only felt alive. Ethan's voice softened as he told me about his college dreams. Jake made another joke, and I laughed so hard I nearly cried. It felt good to be seen again. To feel wanted, even for a fleeting second. But somewhere between laughter and silence, the air changed. The way they looked at me shifted. Less playful, more deliberate. I felt it in the pause between words, in the way their eyes lingered too long, in the heavy silence that filled the room when the movie ended. The thunder outside seemed to fade, replaced by the pounding of my heart. I knew what was about to happen, and I did not stop it. That night would become the line I could never uncross. The storm outside eventually stopped. But inside me, a different one had just begun. The storm outside had quieted to a soft drizzle. But inside the house, Something else was building. Something electric, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of pizza, wet clothes, and a tension that felt alive. Ethan was sitting on the far end of the couch, his hand resting against the cushion, just close enough for me to notice. Jake leaned casually against the armrest, his grin fading into something quieter. Something that made my stomach twist with both curiosity and fear. It was one of those moments that feels like a crossroads, when time slows down, and the smallest choice decides the rest of your life. I remember thinking, I could stand up right now. I could thank them for the company, hand them a towel, and send them out into the night. But I did not. Instead, I stayed seated, fingers tracing the rim of my glass, pretending not to feel the heat rising in my face. For months, I had been starving for attention. Not physical touch alone, but emotional presence. The kind of closeness that makes you feel seen, wanted, alive. Mark used to make me feel that way. But ever since he lost his job, it was as if he had lost the ability to love at all. I had tried to fix it. I had prayed, pleaded, waited. But loneliness has a way of making even good people forget who they are. Ethan glanced at me again, and this time I met his eyes. There was no mistaking what that look meant. His expression carried both invitation and warning. And in it, I saw my own reflection. Tired, fragile, craving something real. Jake noticed too. "You look like you have not laughed that hard in a long time," he said quietly. His voice was different now, lower, steadier. And he was right. I had not. The room felt smaller. The sound of the rain softened to a whisper. Every heartbeat became louder than the thunder had been an hour ago. I told myself I was only letting the moment breathe, that there was no harm in company, no danger in laughter. But deep inside, I knew that the boundary between loneliness and betrayal had already begun to blur. Ethan's hand brushed mine. Just slightly. It was such a small touch, but it carried the weight of everything I had been missing. I could have pulled away. I should have. Instead, I froze. A silence fell over the room. Not awkward, just charged. Jake's eyes flickered between us. I could see his jaw tighten, confusion and curiosity crossing his face. It was surreal. Two strangers, both watching me, both reading emotions I had spent years trying to hide from my own husband. I whispered something I still do not understand. Something like, "You should not." But my voice trembled. And no one moved. When Ethan leaned closer, it felt like the world tilted. For a second, I forgot where I was, forgot the closed bedroom door only a few feet away, forgot the man I had once promised forever. The storm that had been brewing in me for months finally broke. Jake stood up, pacing slowly, his laughter gone. The way he looked at me now was different. Half disbelief, half temptation. "This feels wrong," he said under his breath. It was wrong. Every cell in my body screamed it. But the ache in my chest, the ache of being unseen for so long, drowned out reason. I told myself that Mark would never know. That this night would vanish into memory like a dream I would wake from. But even as I thought it, I knew it was a lie. What followed happened slowly, like gravity pulling what was already falling. The warmth of a hand, the closeness of breath, the betrayal of a heart that wanted too much. Every sound from the next room felt like a threat. The shift of the bed springs, the faint creak of the floor. My pulse pounded so hard that I could barely breathe. Yet the more wrong it felt, the more impossible it became to stop. There was no passion in it, not really. It was desperation dressed as desire. It was years of silence bursting out in a moment of noise. When it was over, I sat there trembling, staring at the floor. Ethan looked pale, Jake restless. None of us spoke. The air was filled with the weight of what we had done. Mark's soft snore still came from the other room. Steady, unaware, heartbreaking. The two young men stood quietly, collecting their jackets, their faces shadowed by guilt and confusion. I could not look at them. I could barely look at myself. Before they left, Ethan said softly, "You do not have to explain. I understand loneliness." Jake only nodded, eyes low, and stepped into the night. The door closed, and for the first time in months, the silence in that house felt unbearable. I sat there, my hands shaking, staring at the empty pizza boxes scattered across the coffee table. The movie credits were still rolling on the screen, whispering names I could not read. In that moment, I realized something painful and permanent. Loneliness does not disappear when you fill it with noise. It grows heavier when you realize what it cost you to silence it. I could still hear Mark breathing, still smell his cologne faintly on the hallway air. And all I could think was, what have I done? That night, I did not sleep. I sat on that couch until dawn, watching the rain stop and the light of morning creep through the blinds. When Mark finally woke up, I was still there, pale, distant, and broken in ways he would never fully understand. He smiled faintly and asked if I had slept at all. I said yes. It was the first lie I told him after the truth had already died between us. Morning light has a cruel honesty to it. It pours through the windows, illuminating every flaw, every shadow, every trace of the night before. I remember that morning vividly. How the sunlight crept across the living room, touching the couch where everything had happened. It was as if the universe itself wanted me to face what I had done. Mark walked into the room still wearing his old gray t-shirt, his hair disheveled from sleep. He looked tired, older somehow. He smiled faintly at me, and my chest tightened. It was the same gentle smile that had once made me fall in love with him. But now, it only made me feel the sharpness of guilt deeper than ever. "Did you eat last night?" he asked, his voice rough from sleep. I nodded. "Yes, I ordered pizza." He chuckled softly. "You and your midnight cravings." He had no idea. No idea that I had crossed a line so cruelly close to where he had slept. He kissed my forehead before walking to the kitchen. That single gesture nearly shattered me. How could he still touch me with such tenderness when my soul was drenched in betrayal? The hours that followed were a blur. I cleaned, folded laundry, and moved through the house like a ghost. Every corner of that living room whispered reminders. The faint smell of rain, the indentation on the couch cushion, the sight of the pizza boxes still stacked by the door. I threw them away quickly, almost violently, as if getting rid of the evidence would somehow cleanse my conscience. But guilt is not something you can hide in a trash bin. It follows you, sits in your throat, and breathes down your neck every time you close your eyes. For days, I tried to pretend. To laugh when Mark laughed. To hold his hand when he reached for mine. But inside, I was falling apart. It was not long before the cracks began to show. One evening, about a week later, Mark called from the living room, his voice uneasy. "Did someone else deliver that pizza last Friday?" My heart stopped. "Why do you ask?" He held up something small, a black baseball cap. I recognized it instantly. Jake had left it behind. My hands turned cold. "I found it under the couch," he said, frowning. "Did one of the delivery guys forget this?" I forced a laugh, pretending to remember vaguely. "Yes, maybe. I think one of them did." Mark nodded slowly, but said nothing else. Still, I saw the question in his eyes, a flicker of doubt, of suspicion. From that night, everything changed. He began watching me differently, not accusingly, but cautiously, as if afraid to know the truth. He asked more questions, lingered longer when I looked away, and studied my every reaction. The silence between us grew thicker, heavier, and I could feel the distance stretching like a canyon that no bridge could close. Then came the night I could no longer bear it. We were sitting at the dining table, barely touching our food. The television was on, but neither of us was watching. He looked at me with tired eyes and said softly, "You have been somewhere else lately." The words broke something in me. I dropped my fork, covered my face with my hands, and cried. He reached for me, confused. "Hey, what is it? What happened?" I wanted to tell him everything, that I was sorry, that it was a mistake, that loneliness had turned me into someone I did not recognize. But every time I opened my mouth, the words froze. Because no explanation would ever sound like anything but betrayal. So I whispered the truth. And in that single moment, I watched the light leave his eyes. Mark did not shout. He did not throw things or curse. He simply sat back in silence, breathing hard, his face drained of color. The quiet that followed was worse than any scream could have been. When he finally spoke, his voice trembled. "In this house? While I was asleep?" I nodded, tears streaming down my face. He stood up and walked away. He did not slam the door. He just left. The next morning, his side of the closet was empty. His toothbrush was gone. and I knew that what I had destroyed could never be rebuilt. The weeks that followed were endless. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping. The house that once felt too small for two now felt unbearably large for one. The silence that I used to hate became a punishment I could not escape. Every creak of the floor reminded me of him. Every shadow in the hallway looked like the ghost of what I had lost. Sometimes, late at night, I would sit on that same couch, the scene of my downfall, and whisper apologies into the darkness. But apologies do not change history. They only echo back, reminding you of what you can never fix. People say that time heals everything. I disagree. Time does not heal what you refuse to forgive yourself for. It only teaches you how to live with the ache. I never saw Ethan or Jake again. I heard that one of them moved to another state, and the other changed jobs. It did not matter. The only person I truly hurt was the one who loved me most. Years have passed now. I still wear my wedding ring sometimes. Not out of denial, but as a reminder of who I used to be, and the night I stopped being her. When I look back on it all, I realize something I wish I had understood sooner. Loneliness is not an excuse for betrayal. It is a cry for help that must never be answered in the arms of someone else. If you are listening to this story tonight, maybe you are standing on your own edge, lonely, unseen, craving something more. Please, walk away before the moment takes you. Because the price of temporary comfort is permanent regret. One night can destroy a lifetime of love. And when the morning light comes, it shows everything. If this story touched something deep within you, I want you to take a moment and think about the choices we make when no one is watching. Sometimes it is not the loud betrayals that destroy love, but the quiet moments when we stop fighting for it. If you have ever felt unseen, unloved, or forgotten in your own relationship, remember, loneliness is temporary, but the damage done in the name of it can last a lifetime. Do you believe a single night of weakness deserves a lifetime of punishment? Or can someone truly be forgiven after breaking the one heart that trusted them the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear your voice, your pain, your lessons, your truth. And if you have not yet subscribed, please do. Every click, every comment, every share is what keeps this channel alive. It is the heartbeat that fuels these stories we tell together. Because sometimes, healing begins not with silence, but with a story that dares to tell the truth.